Hi, Patsy. Welcome to Radio Out There.
Thank you very much. It's a delight to be here, Barry.
Now, this is your first time on the program, so maybe we could have a bit of a chat about your background, because you're something of a rarity. We have a lot in common, because you're a journalist, a trained journalist, worked in mainstream media, and yet here you are also very much involved in astrology, psychic work, medium work, and all of those very meaningful things in life. Patsy, tell me about yourself.
Okay, thank you. Well, I very much began as a writer, I would say, even at a young age, writing poetry in my little diaries and that sort of thing. Also reading cards and palms at a young age, sort of in my early teens. And so the two sort of really began together, I would say, And so both the writing and the interest in the more esoteric subjects. So then I guess as I've just gone through life, both of them have really developed side by side. And obviously then going through the educational system, going to uni, there I really did learn a great deal about myths and legends because I studied literature. I studied French and German literature. And so that really deepened my interest in archetypes, because when we're talking about myth and legend, we're often talking about what in psychological terms are known as archetypes, obviously, and truths about life when we're talking about myths. So my academic background, because I did then go into academia and actually was considering becoming a lecturer and a professor and that sort of thing, is quite ingrained as well in my 20s. But then at that time I switched over to journalism and very much then honed my writing skills in, as you say, the mainstream. So I worked there for fashion magazines and women's magazines, mostly in London. And so basically then my interest in astrology kicked in after that a little bit more. Whilst I was in London, I studied at the Faculty of Astrological Studies.
Was there something that triggered that?
That triggered the study in astrology?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think very much just wanting to study with real experts. I guess having been through the university system, I thought, having read various astrology books and wonderful and very interested in that, again, from a very young age, from about 14, I did think, well, no, I need to have that academic background as well and really seriously study this. And so that's what I did. Then the journalism sort of progressed into working when I moved to Australia to daily news reporting as opposed to fashion and women's magazines. I went into newspapers. So really the honing of the writing skills was continuing at that time. But simultaneously at that time when I moved here, I'd also begun my astrology practice. So they really very much ran hand in hand.
Yeah, side by side.
Side by side, yeah.
Yeah, I found the same thing. I was still working as a newsreader and doing mainstream radio work, and also lecturing in journalism at the time, and also still doing astrology and writing astrology columns. It's interesting how some people are able to put these two modalities, shall we say, side by side, whereas so many other people in mainstream journalism and broadcasting poo-poo the whole idea. Have you found that?
On the one hand, I have found that, but on the other hand, of course, so many publications run horoscopes.
Yeah.
And very much celebrate their astrologers to a degree, because they know that, for instance, when the year's forecasts come out, in January or December the previous year, they know that issue is probably going to sell particularly well. So we are sort of quite celebrated in the media from that point of view, that our work is very much treasured. But from the other point of view, potentially I do absolutely understand what you mean, is in that it's not particularly considered to be journalistic work, and yet is still very valued. I tend to say to people nowadays, because I do write horoscopes now, obviously, for newspapers and magazines, that where in the past I spent more time as a news journalist, I very much was writing about the past. Now, as an astrologer for newspapers, I very much write about the future, but the actual technique and the process is very much the same as a journalist. So, for having sort of worked in both areas, I feel there is a huge crossover, but I do understand exactly what you mean. It's quite interesting that we can, as astrologers and psychics, potentially feel that we are a little bit on the outside and yet integral to an awful lot of media at the same time.
Yeah, look, I think what you've done is fantastic because there are so many people, and maybe people even listening to our program now, that think, well, yes, psychics and astrologers and that, they're a breed apart, Are they a bit flaky? Are they a bit na-na, woo-woo stuff, whatever? Particularly people who are just in the general public, shall we say. So to know that somebody has had an academic background such as yours and studies astrology and puts the two together and comes up with the information to help people and to get that information out there, I think that's tremendously, creating great credibility, shall we say, in the whole genre.
In the whole genre, that's right. I mean, I have to say that I feel very blessed to have had all the opportunities I've had to be taught along the way by some of the world's most proficient professors and astrologers in their own subject. I've been very blessed to have been able to do exactly what you're saying, and I guess in a sense the writing of my book has been in response to that, that I know that I can write as a journalist in a way that will mean something to everyone. This is what we try to do as journalists, so you can pick up a paper or a magazine and everyone can understand what we're saying.
Yeah.
And certainly I've found with a lot of astrological concepts and ideas, they are very complex. And so to have the opportunity there to be able to put that across in an understandable and relatable way, I felt, I really should get down and write a book then, so that we can get more information out. So it's been a lovely process, really.
And so you have written a book, a great book too, Astrology: Secrets of the Moon. Discover your true life path and purpose. Now, I think all too many people out there will look at an astrology column in a newspaper or a magazine, the horoscope, and think that is what astrology is about. I used to do a radio program many years ago with a clairvoyant. When I told her I was going to study astrology, she said, "Oh, what do you want to do that for?" I mean, that means astrology says there's only 12 different types of people in the world.
Yeah.
And I said, well, no, that's not quite the case, really.
No.
So to get that information across, that horoscopes and daily horoscopes are sun sign based, to be able to go much, much deeper is something that you're doing here with this book. So tell us a bit about that.
Okay, well, thank you. So really, as you say, the sun sign horoscope is a tiny sort of drop in the ocean in the larger study of astrology. And it's very much there as a lovely appetizer, I sort of feel, for anyone who would be interested in the study of astrology, to read a well-written sun sign column and think, well, that really does resonate, and that's lovely, and it's sparking an interest, and it's helpful for me.
Yeah, but it's not the be-all and end-all.
It's not the be-all and the end-all. And again, in response to that, that's partly why I've written this book, in that it does go much deeper, and for me, in my experience as an astrologer, providing consultations with people and very sort of specifically to their own personal lives, I've found that the moon's north node, which is an astrological point concerning the moon's path and the sun's path. I'll go into technicalities if you like. But
well, look, if you could just give us a thumbnail sketch on that one, because when we start talking about nodes that aren't planets, of course, people can understand, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn, so on. But to talk about a node, I can see people already scratching their head and saying, well, what's a node? Isn't that something that grows on the back of your neck or something? Well,
that's right. Well, it literally comes from the Latin, which means a knot. And it's a term that's been coined to depict the point where the path of the moon, as it orbits the Earth, intersects with the path of the sun as we see it from here on Earth. And those intersecting points are known as the nodes. And these are areas that have been recognised and studied for thousands of years, even going through back into Indian astrology, for instance, and been found to be very relevant specifically to do with our soul path. So where the sun sign astrology, which has been prevalent, in the media, really for the sort of, since the 60s and 70s.
Well, it's because of ease of access, really, isn't it?
That's right. It's ease of access and it's relatable on that sort of mass media sense. That applies more to our core motivation, which does resonate immediately with many of us. The sole purpose, which is depicted by these nodes, the moon's north node, is very obviously goes much deeper. And I have to say that in my years as an astrologer, I've found that although we're talking about soul purpose, which may sound very much sort of out there, and potentially just too much, actually resonates so much more deeply for people I've read charts for than various other aspects as well. It really seems to, when we talk about our moon's north node, our soul purpose, it really just strikes a chord immediately, and so many people are already on that path. It's a natural path that we're taking, which is runs in tandem with our sun sign, our moon sign, all the rest of it, but really does seem to resonate on a heart level for so many people who are seeking direction in their journey.
It's interesting you should say that, because I'm talking about my own new book at the moment about the afterlife, and from the afterlife they tell us that basically we're here on Earth to develop our soul, and the more development we can have, the better. That's our sole purpose in life, if you'll pardon the pun there, to be able to have all the experiences that will develop the soul. So if you can get in touch with it through the nodal areas, then that is extremely important.
It's extremely important, and I feel that that's why it resonates immediately with so many people who've looked into their own personal north node, because I subscribe to that idea too, that we are very much here to develop our pardon the pun again, soul purpose, but our soul's purpose, is to feel very much that we're achieving some form of, whether it's learning or fulfillment, and that's really the basis of this book, is to encourage the reader to look at, well, that's true. When I feel happiest is when I feel that I've accomplished something, and that has to strike a chord for me, personally, for me to feel that I've accomplished something, and that's really where the purpose comes in. And
well, that's not surprising, Patsy, because I've been told by Spirit that the soul, which is surrounded by the Spirit, attaches itself to the body at the heart level. That's why we talk about heart and soul. So that the heart obviously is also the seat of the emotions, so that if you're satisfying your soul, you're resonating and connecting with your soul, then it's having a heart connection. So what you're saying there makes perfect sense.
Yeah, thank you. And also what I found is that when people take that first step on that path that satisfies themselves on that heart and soul connection, that life just automatically becomes easier and gains flow. It's almost that just taking that first step opens new doors, and then the next step becomes easier, and you proceed on that exponential curve of more fulfillment and more happiness sort of thing. So it's very much, the book is very much, a pointer in a certain direction for the reader to help, hopefully, to just take that first step if they haven't already, and obviously if they have already, further pointers into ways to feel accomplished and fulfilled in your life. And we've certainly found that psychologists say so much that for us to feel happy and fulfilled, we must derive meaning and purpose in our lives.
Yeah. Look, let's take a quick break here at the moment and come back and talk more specifically about what the north and then south node as well, the impact it can have, and how we can find out more about that. You're listening to Radio Out There, and my guest this week is Patsy Bennett, talking about her new book, which is only being released here in Australia this week, actually, Astrology, Secrets of the Moon, discover your true life path and purpose. Back shortly. Patsy, we've talked about what the North Node is. We've talked about the soul connection. And I guess people are now going to think, well, yeah, I know how to find out about my sun sign, because I know, like, I'm born in July, so I'm sun sign is Cancer. That's easy. So how do we find out where our North Node is and what it all means?
Well, there is a table in the beginning of my book which shows all the dates for all the signs. So in the same way that, for instance, some of our first sun sign books came out, Linda Goodman's sun sign books, you would actually look at the dates underneath the zodiac sign and then sort of work out, all right, I'm Aries. I have a table there that will show you exactly what North Node sign you are, zodiac sign, depending on what your date of birth is as well.
And of course the North Node, when you look at this table, it's a great table too, by the way. When you look at it, the North Node doesn't change sort of rapidly. It's not like the moon that changes sign every couple of days.
Yeah.
So it hangs around there for quite some time.
That's right. And I feel that sort of, to a degree, can depict, it's a little bit faster, it moves more quickly, that the astrological point moves more quickly than a generational marker. But it's generally a good couple of 18 months to a couple of years. And so you can almost see, within your classmates or within your area, people of a similar interest in group have similar interest or just sort of motivation that is going to really push them forward into different areas in their lives. And the way I've written the book is very much so that we can see these general interests that, yes, that's true, I remember that particular class. You might see as a teacher, you can remember, yes, I remember the year of 57, that all those children were particularly, motivated. All those children were particularly interested in esoteric matters, but all these other children were very practical and sporty,
Yeah.
It almost sort of goes by year.
So you can put a generational impact onto this.
I feel that you can. I feel that you can too, because as we sort of traverse through each zodiacal sign, as you know, there are particular markers where, someone who's a very late Libran has some traits in common with a very early Scorpio. They don't suddenly sort of turn into a completely different characteristic.
No, we talk about that as the cusp.
Yes, the cusp. There's often, a big overlap of both. So when you're looking at a generation, then most certainly we'd be looking at a few years of a certain aspect of the zodiac, and we might sort of see particular traits going through there, most definitely.
Okay, so now the North Node, talking about our soul purpose, and a lot of people I've found, and I guess you have over the years too, really are not in touch with their real purpose in life. So I'm playing the everyman here.
Yes, that's right.
Even though I'm an astrologer, I'm taking my astrologer's hat off.
Well, that's right.
So that I can try and anticipate the questions that some listeners might be wanting to ask at the moment. So I can actually look at this North Node and find out about my purpose. Is that what you're saying?
That's right, yeah. Gain insight into your purpose. And very much the way that I've written the book is from the point of view of playing to your strengths. So I've very much written the book from a positive standpoint, so that I've tried to make every sentence a motivational sentence, as opposed to not necessarily a damning sentence, as in, all people under this sign are going to be lacking in trust. I have tried to turn everything so that it's very motivational and helpful, so that we're not only reading about our soul purpose, but also getting into the practice of thinking very positively about our soul purpose, because that in its very self is what is going to help us to develop soul purpose. And it's very much for that reason that the publishers have looked at, lovely publishers, Rockpool Publishing, have looked at this approach towards astrology I've taken as a new sort of positive approach in the same line as positive psychology, where we tend to look at positive traits as opposed to negative traits, from the point of view that the more we focus on our positive traits, the more they grow and the less the negative traits sort of interfere.
Yeah, fair enough. But I can hear some people, I can hear the thoughts buzzing around. Hang on. Now, I was in a class where various other people, we were all born, within a few months of each other.
Yep.
And we are all completely different people.
Yes.
How can we generalize? How can you put a statement out saying that because everybody's North Node might have been, well, mine's in the sign of Virgo, for instance.
Yeah.
And I can look at that and think, yes, and I've read the section, obviously, lots of things that apply to me. But if somebody's thinking, well, hang on, what about all the people that I know? They're nothing like me.
That's right.
How can you put that hat on them?
Yeah. No, I completely understand what you mean. And this is very much the case where this is where writing about astrology can become very complex. In the same way that writing a horoscope column, obviously, the more rational of us will say, well, how can you carve up the entire population into 12 sections? That's ridiculous. And that's where the finesse of it comes in, where I must write something that can apply to everyone without alienating, anyone at all. So in other words, what I have to look for is particular traits or influences around us on particular days, which will resonate for all of us.
Yep.
And that's very much in this book is also the case, where I'm talking about soul purpose, it's something that is on, if you think of the onion and the layers, it's the heart, it's the middle of that onion. All the other layers around it may represent our personality, for instance. So by all means, we would obviously in one class have so many people with different personalities. We may have people with completely different emotional approaches to life. We may have people with a different sort of mindset or temperament, So by all means, we are multi-layered, and this is something really that I'm trying to approach in having written this book, from the point of view that we have in astrology tended to believe, well, we're just sun signs, we're just our core solar plexus motivation, so to speak. We are core selves, and we are out here working as ego, not in a negative way, but individual people, and we are motivated to do X, Y, and Z. Whereas we are so much more than that. So that is really, you've hit the nail on the head, where actually writing a book such as this, and any astrology book that is intended for the everyday reader, we have to be very, very careful to be precise, and yet also to be, obviously, also to be meaningful, but also not to preclude any form of self-development or personality or emotional self.
Yeah, that's right, and it's so difficult, isn't it? I looked through and I thought, yes, there's a lot of stuff that relates to me, what you've written about in the Virgo section. My North Node's in Virgo, as I mentioned. But then a couple of the words jumped out. I would be really good at gardening. I'm terrible at gardening. I don't like gardening. I like walking in nice gardens.
Yeah.
I can't be bothered, being out there pulling weeds out and doing all that sort of stuff, I love looking out. I can look out the back off my back deck at the moment, and because it's spring here in Australia, the hippiastras have just come out, one of my favourite flowers.
Yeah.
But that's about the extent of it. So I thought, well, I wonder if people who are reading this might think the same as me, that yes, there's aspects there that you've written about.
Yeah.
That I think, no, I don't like that at all. What's she talking about?
Yeah. I think it's very much, I have written it from the point of view that it's motivational. So, and certainly I think your appreciation of gardens, obviously, is, something that could include actually potentially in different phases of your life. Potentially when you're a little bit older, you may decide, well, you know what, I will plant a window box, and yes, I do derive a great deal of satisfaction from that. And so we do definitely have phases in our lives where, obviously when you're sort of at school, you probably wouldn't like gardening at all, or if you're particularly busy, it's labour intensive. But just merely your appreciation of gardens, is something that could potentially lead to an enjoyment of that at various phases of your life. So the book is very much intended as a guide, and obviously, yes, we do have other elements at play, whether it's cultural or societal or environmental, where we can't have a garden, and so we won't be able to do that.
Yeah.
But most definitely, so it's sort of intended as a guide, and perhaps try this and see how it goes. And you may find that you simply just fly.
So what we're actually saying here is that when you look at your North Node, in whichever sign it's in, that is part of your makeup, because otherwise you wouldn't need to do another full astrology chart, would you? Be able to just have a look at the North Node, and that would tell you everything you needed to know about life.
Yep.
But it's an essential part of that onion you were talking about there before. It's part of the overall picture.
It's part of the overall picture, but in my experience, it's very much central. It's very much core to the overall picture.
Yep.
And I actually have a quote in the book from Martin Schulman, who wrote one of the first books about the moon's North Node.
Yeah, it's a great quote too, by the way. Will you tell everybody?
In the 70s, yes, I'll read it if you like. He says, many astrologers believe that the nodes hold more importance than the rest of the chart, and the rest of the astrological chart, obviously. And I very much agree with him. From the point of view, as you mentioned, we are very much on a soul journey. Some people believe, we're in the soul, we're at school. Life is a university of life. And very much we're here to develop our souls. So simply from that point of view, the North Node, which represents our soul's development in this lifetime now, is obviously integral to an overall chart reading. Also, just simply from the other point of view, I found from my experience that when I talk about someone's North Node, it simply resonates over and above so many other parts of the chart. But most definitely we do need to look at the whole rounded picture.
Yeah. And I think just to wrap things up, that when people do buy your book, and I would urge them to do it because I think it's not only well written, but the information is fantastic.
Thank you.
When people pick that up, what is your advice to them to just look at this as complete information, or what?
I would urge them to approach it in their own unique way, as their own unique, lovely person, because we are all unique. And so, for instance, some people may want to, they'll pick it up and they want to read every single word from start to finish in a sort of 4-hour, or 5-hour session. Another person may just think, what, I just want to dip in, dip out. It has been written so you can read it in whichever way you feel that you want to approach it. It can be a dip in, dip out sort of book, just have a bit of a look at this section, go away and let that filter in, meditate on it, contemplate, whichever you like. You can go back to it. It's really been written with that in mind, that it hopefully will suit everyone who wants to find out a little bit more about, why they're here, their true life path. That was my intention, was that it can really be read in any way whatsoever that you prefer.
I think the other really valuable thing, Patsy, is the fact that we can help understand other people in our family or circle of friends, and particularly parents who might be able to look at this, work out where their children or grandchildren's nodes are, and gain some insights to maybe help them to help themselves.
Well, that's right. That's been partly my intention as well, and I do have some little pointers there for parents of children with the particular North Nodes placements. Just little pointers, along the way. And most definitely, I do believe that it will give us insight into key people in our lives from that compassionate point of view, of understanding their motivation a little bit more, and potentially what they have been trying to achieve in their lives too.
That's fantastic. All right. Patsy Bennett, Astrology, Secrets of the Moon, Discover Your True Life Path and Purpose. And the book is now released, and it's available through Rockpool. And I guess for people in other countries who are listening to us right now, the best way to be able to get that would be what, through outlets like Amazon or
Amazon. It's available on Amazon Booktopia. Yep, and via Rockpool Publishing's website.
Fantastic. Patsy, all the best with the book. I think it's a really great addition to the world of astrology.
Thank you so much, Barry. Thank you.